I woke one morning to a silence so profound it felt as if the world had stopped turning. My wife had vanished without a word, leaving behind echoes of laughter now stilled in empty rooms and promises that faded like whispers in the dark. The weight of her absence was palpable, each heartbeat a desperate plea for answers that would never come. 2 weeks later, in the dead of night, my phone rang. The unknown number on the screen pulsed with foreboding, and when I answered, a calm voice introduced itself as her new boyfriend. That call shattered the last fragile remnant of the life I thought we had built together. I never imagined that one ordinary morning could unravel everything I held dear. I had woken up expecting the usual routine: a cup of coffee in our sunlit kitchen, the soft hum of the radio, perhaps a whispered good morning from the love of my life. But that day the only greeting was silence. As I stepped out of bed, I found the house hauntingly empty. Her clothes were gone. Her favorite mug, the one with our initials, sat abandoned on the counter. It was as if she had been erased from the very fabric of our home. I searched every corner, every closet, every drawer, yet there was no note, no explanation, only a void that screamed louder than any words could. For 2 agonizing weeks, I wandered through days that bled into nights, grappling with disbelief and an aching loneliness that seeped into every fiber of my being. I replayed every conversation, every smile, every silent promise that had once made our marriage seem unbreakable. I questioned if I had missed the subtle signals of her discontent, the late nights at work, the fleeting glances in the mirror that held secrets I never deciphered. Instead of confronting the creeping dread, I chose to believe in a reason, any reason that might justify her sudden departure. But the silence in our once vibrant home grew heavier with each passing day, a constant reminder of what I had lost. My nights turned restless, haunted by dreams of her returning, of her standing in the doorway with a tearful apology that would mend the broken pieces of our shared past. I'd awaken to the sterile light of morning, only to remember that those dreams were as ephemeral as smoke. The house, our sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum of memories, a place where every familiar object taunted me with a ghost of her presence. I tried to keep busy, immersing myself in work and mundane tasks, hoping that the relentless passage of time would numb the piercing pain of abandonment. Yet, nothing could quiet the questions that gnawed at me. Why had she left? How could she vanish so completely without a trace? It was during one of these long, sleepless nights, when the clock's ticking was the only sound breaking the oppressive silence, that my phone began to ring. I hesitated, dreading the unknown voice on the other end. When I finally answered, my heart pounded as the digital display revealed a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I ventured, my voice raw from disuse. The response was calm, almost disarmingly so, a voice that spoke with measured tones as if reciting a rehearsed script. "Hi, this is Aaron," the voice said. "I'm calling on behalf of Lisa." At that moment, I felt as if the ground had given way beneath me. My mind raced to process the name. Lisa, the woman I had once shared every hope and dream with, now spoken of in a detached manner by someone I'd never met. Aaron continued, his voice steady, "I wanted to let you know that Lisa has moved on. We're starting a new chapter and I think it's time you know." His words cut through me like a knife, each syllable a cold reminder of my own inadequacies. I managed only a raspy, "What do you mean moved on?" before the line fell silent for a long, agonizing moment. The silence was oppressive, and I could feel my breath hitch as I waited for him to continue. He explained that Lisa had left abruptly, leaving behind all that we had built together, and that she had found solace in someone new. According to him, she had been searching for a different kind of life, a life filled with excitement and unpredictability, things I had never offered. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions: betrayal, disbelief, and a deep, burning sadness. My mind was in disarray, unable to reconcile the loving woman I knew with the one who had simply disappeared. Aaron's voice, which should have brought clarity, only deepened the mystery, leaving me with more questions than answers. In the weeks that followed that fateful phone call, I began to navigate the labyrinth of my own shattered emotions. I oscillated between states of numbness and a searing clarity that illuminated every flaw and every moment of neglect, real or imagined, that might have contributed to her decision. I questioned whether our love had been a fragile illusion from the beginning, a temporary respite in a world too harsh to bear. I turned to old photographs and mementos, each a relic of happier times, and wondered how those moments could be reconciled with the reality of her leaving without a word. The wedding album, once a symbol of our shared promise, now mocked me with its glossy images of a love that had withered away. I sought refuge in the quiet corners of our neighborhood, taking long walks as dusk fell and the streets emptied of their usual bustle. The trees, heavy with autumn's golden leaves, whispered secrets of change and decay, mirroring the transformation in my own life. I would wander aimlessly, lost in thought, trying to piece together the puzzle of our disintegrated marriage. Every step was a reminder of the distance I now had to traverse, both physically as I walked down the familiar paths of our shared past, and emotionally as I journeyed through the dark corridors of loss and regret. At times, I found myself drawn to the little places where we had once shared laughter, a coffee shop where we had planned our future, a park bench where we had sat for hours discussing dreams. The memories were bittersweet. Each one was a double-edged sword that brought both warmth and a deep sense of sorrow. I could almost see her there, a specter of the life we had planned, her smile a fading echo of the love that once promised eternity. But in every reflection, I was left with the overwhelming realization that nothing would ever be the same again. One chilly evening, as the wind howled outside like a chorus of lost souls, I returned to our empty house, its walls now cold and unwelcoming. I wandered from room to room, each space a testament to a life abruptly halted. In our bedroom, I found her favorite scarf draped over the back of a chair, a silent relic of the woman who once filled this home with light and laughter. I held it close, inhaling the faint trace of her perfume, and for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she might return. But that hope was as ephemeral as the mist outside my window, disappearing with the first light of dawn. In the midst of this turmoil, I began to confront my own shortcomings. I spent long, sleepless nights reflecting on our years together, the moments of neglect and the silent arguments that had gone unresolved. I wondered if I had taken her for granted, if the mundane routine of our daily life had blinded me to her needs and desires. The realization was bitter and painful, like a mirror reflecting all the faults I had tried desperately to ignore. I was forced to face the possibility that our love had been a casualty of complacency, that in my quest for stability, I had somehow failed to nurture the very flame that had once burned so brightly. In the quiet hours of one particularly dark night, I sat at my desk, surrounded by scattered letters and old photographs, and began to write. I wrote not to persuade her to return, but to understand my own heart, to sift through the rubble of memories and emotions in search of some semblance of truth. My pen moved feverishly across the paper as I poured out my confusion, my anger, and the deep, unrelenting sadness that had taken root in my soul. With each word, I felt a small measure of relief, as if I were slowly exorcising the ghosts of our past. Writing became my salvation, a way to process the overwhelming grief and betrayal that threatened to consume me. Days turned into weeks, and as the seasons began their inevitable shift, so too did my inner landscape. I joined a support group for those who had experienced the pain of abandonment, hoping that sharing my story might illuminate a path forward. In the quiet circle of strangers who had all known loss, I discovered that I was not alone. Each person carried their own burdens, their own stories of love betrayed and dreams deferred. Their words, filled with quiet resilience and hard-won wisdom, offered me a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the aftermath of devastation, life could continue to blossom in unexpected ways. Yet, despite these small victories in self-healing, the call from Erin, and the realization that my wife had found solace in another, continued to haunt me. It was as though her absence had become a specter that loomed over every aspect of my existence. I often found myself questioning whether the life I had once known was a myth, a mirage that had evaporated under the harsh light of reality. In quiet moments, I would imagine her new life in vivid detail, the thrill of new love, the excitement of a fresh start, and the possibility that she had finally found the freedom she had longed for. This vision was both infuriating and heartbreaking, a duality that left me feeling simultaneously enraged and desolate. I began to examine our past with a newfound intensity, searching for clues that might explain her departure. I scoured old emails, text messages, and voice recordings, desperate for any sign of discontent or hidden longing that I might have overlooked. In the delicate trace of her digital footprint, I found nothing that could justify the abruptness of her exit. Instead, I was left with a cold, unsettling truth. Sometimes people leave without explanation, leaving behind shattered lives and unanswered questions. This realization forced me to confront the harsh reality that closure was a luxury rarely afforded to those left behind. In the midst of this inner tumult, I discovered that there was beauty even in the broken fragments of my past. I started volunteering at a local community center, a place where people from all walks of life gathered to share their stories and support one another. There, amidst the vibrant energy of others determined to rebuild their lives, I slowly began to reclaim my own. I listened to stories of heartbreak and redemption, of lives that had been upended by the unpredictability of fate, and I found comfort in the shared human experience. It was a slow process, a gradual mending of the ragged edges of my heart, but each day with every act of kindness I felt a little more whole. One crisp autumn afternoon, I visited the park where we had once taken long, leisurely walks. The trees were ablaze with fiery hues, and as I sat on our old bench, I allowed myself to feel the full spectrum of my emotions. I wept openly for the loss of our shared dreams, for the betrayal that had fractured the foundation of our marriage, and for the future that would never be. But as the tears flowed, so too did a quiet acceptance. I realized that pain, while excruciating, was a necessary prelude to healing, a rite of passage that, in time, would lead me to a deeper understanding of myself and the world around me. As the weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. I took up painting, a hobby I had long abandoned, in an attempt to translate my inner turmoil into something tangible. The canvases became a silent testament to my journey through grief, bold strokes of red and black intermingled with gentle washes of blue, a visual symphony of loss and hope. In the quiet solitude of my studio, I found a sense of purpose, a way to express the inexpressible and to honor the memory of a love that had been so brutally severed. Through it all, the memory of that phone call from Aaron remained etched in my mind. It was a turning point, a moment when I was forced to confront the reality that life, in all its unpredictable cruelty, often leaves no room for the neat resolutions we so desperately crave. My wife's silent departure and subsequent rebirth with someone new was not an indictment of our past love, but rather a stark reminder that people change and sometimes they choose paths that leave those they once cherished in the shadows. I learned that acceptance was not about forgetting or condoning the hurt, but about recognizing that life moves inexorably forward, regardless of our personal tragedies. In the quiet aftermath of her departure, I discovered that the only way to honor our shared history was to embrace the lessons it had imparted. I began to see that every ending, however painful, was also the beginning of a new chapter, an invitation to reinvent oneself, to find strength in vulnerability, and to rediscover the beauty hidden within the scars. Now, as I sit in the fading light of another day, I look back on this tumultuous period not with bitterness, but with a measured understanding of the impermanence of life and love. My wife's decision to leave without a word and the subsequent call from her new boyfriend are indelible parts of my story, a narrative of loss, betrayal, and ultimately of rebirth. I have learned that while the past may shape us, it does not have to define us. Every day is a chance to start anew, to rebuild from the ruins, and to find hope in the most unexpected of places. In this first part of my journey, I have shared the raw, unvarnished truth of my descent into loneliness and despair, and the slow, painful process of reclaiming my identity amidst the echoes of an abandoned home. I stand now on the threshold of a new beginning, aware that the road ahead may be fraught with obstacles, yet determined to walk it with courage and a steadfast commitment to my own healing. The call from Aaron, though a symbol of profound betrayal, has become the catalyst for my transformation, a reminder that even in the depths of heartbreak, the human spirit can find a way to rise, to forgive, and to love again. The days following that fateful call blurred into one endless stretch of reflection and reckoning. I was forced to confront a reality that I had tried so hard to avoid. My wife had not only left without explanation, but she had also moved on, faster and more decisively than I could have ever imagined. That call from Aaron, her new boyfriend, was the final blow to the fragile remnants of my former life. Yet, as the initial shock subsided, a new, quieter determination began to kindle inside me. I resolved that I would no longer let the ghost of abandonment define who I was. Instead, I would use every jagged piece of betrayal and loss to build a foundation for a future that honored both my own worth and the lessons learned from love's demise. At first, the silence of our empty home was suffocating. I would wander from room to room, tracing my fingertips along the walls where her laughter had once echoed, searching for something, a scrap of note, a sign that she might return. But the house remained an impassive witness to her departure, its once vibrant spaces now cold and hollow. In that isolation, I began a process of reckoning, not with anger alone, but with a deep, honest inquiry into who I was and what I truly needed from life. I started by confronting the painful memories I had long avoided. I dug out old journals and photographs that recounted happier days, flipping through pages that chronicled our shared adventures, whispered dreams and promises made under starlit skies. Each image and every written word forced me to confront the bittersweet reality that love, no matter how fervent, could wither away under the weight of neglect and unmet needs. But in that confrontation, I also discovered that these memories were not solely relics of a broken past, They were also evidence of a time when I believed in the possibility of renewal, of growth, of endless potential. I began to realize that although the woman I once knew had chosen a different path, the lessons and beauty of that chapter could still serve as a compass for my future. Determined to reclaim my sense of self, I sought out therapy and joined a support group for those who had suffered similar losses. In these gatherings, I met individuals whose stories resonated with the ache in my heart, a tapestry of abandoned dreams, shattered trust, and the slow, often painful journey back to hope. In one session, I listened intently as a middle-aged man recounted how he had transformed his heartbreak into a passion for helping others navigate their own emotional storms. His words struck a chord within me, igniting a spark of possibility that perhaps my own sorrow could be repurposed into something meaningful. I began to volunteer at a local community center, lending a hand wherever it was needed. Whether it was organizing art classes for kids, helping to set up community events, or simply listening to someone's story, I found the giving of myself in service to others gradually filled the void that had grown so deep inside me. Each act of kindness, each smile, each nod of understanding, was a step away from the bitterness that had once defined my days. Slowly, I learned that healing was not about erasing the past but about integrating it into a broader, richer tapestry of experience. One particularly transformative day came unexpectedly. I had spent the morning sorting through old belongings in the attic, when I discovered a dusty leather-bound journal I had kept in my early 20s. In its pages, I rediscovered a young man brimming with ambition, hope, and unyielding curiosity about the world. I read through the entries, reminded of a time when I had believed in the power of reinvention, when every setback was a challenge to be met with resolve and optimism. That long-forgotten self emerged like a beacon, urging me to tap into the reservoirs of strength that had been buried beneath years of routine and regret. I realized that while the pain of abandonment had reshaped my life, it had not stripped away my inherent ability to dream again. As autumn gave way to winter, the raw edges of my grief began to soften. The world outside transformed, icy winds swept through bare trees, and the stark landscape carried a kind of austere beauty that paralleled my inner evolution. I started taking long walks in the chilly dusk, letting the biting air clear my head and slow my racing thoughts. In the solitude of those walks, I confronted the difficult truths about my marriage, how I had allowed complacency to creep in, how I had sometimes taken her presence for granted, and how our unspoken resentments had festered until they became insurmountable barriers. I acknowledged my own imperfections with a mixture of sorrow and compassion, and gradually I began to forgive, not just her but myself as well. In one particularly cold evening, as I strolled along a frost-kissed lane lined with dim streetlights, I paused before a small park bench under a sprawling oak. I sat down, pulled my worn jacket closer, and allowed myself a moment of raw vulnerability. I thought about the pain of her leaving, the emptiness that had followed, and the call from Aaron that had pierced my already fragile heart. Yet, amid that reflective solitude I felt something shift, a quiet understanding that I had the power to redefine my existence. I was no longer a victim of circumstance, but a survivor forging a new path through the dark. It was a slow realization, one that took hold gradually as the days passed and my steps became surer. As winter deepened, I sought out new challenges. I enrolled in a creative writing course at the local community college, a decision that both terrified and thrilled me. There, I found a vibrant community of fellow writers and dreamers, people who had also experienced loss and were trying to piece together their fragmented lives through the written word. The act of putting pen to paper was liberating. It allowed me to give form to the chaos within and to articulate emotions that had long been trapped in silence. I began writing short stories, poems, and even essays that chronicled my journey from despair to gradual hope. Each piece was raw and unfiltered, a testament to the pain I had endured and the slow, sometimes uncertain, steps toward healing. In the classroom, I encountered others whose words echoed my own struggles, and together, we built a support system grounded in creativity and shared understanding. Our discussions often meandered through topics of love, loss, and the unpredictable nature of human relationships. I learned that while the sting of betrayal never fully disappeared, it could be tempered by the collective strength of a community that refused to let darkness prevail. Through these interactions, I discovered that even the deepest wounds could serve as portals to growth and transformation. Months turned into nearly a year since that fateful call, and with each passing day, I felt the old pain gradually cede its grip on my spirit. I began to make plans for the future, not as a means of escaping my past, but as a tribute to the life that I still had the power to shape. I considered traveling, exploring places I had only ever dreamed of, and even toyed with the idea of starting my own small business, a quiet cafe and bookstore where people could gather to share stories and ideas. These aspirations, once distant and hazy, now felt within reach, fueled by a newfound confidence that came from facing my demons head-on. One bright spring morning I found myself at a local art fair, admiring vibrant canvases and intricate sculptures. Amid the bustle of artists and visitors, I stumbled upon a booth that showcased local writers' work, a small collection of essays and poems that spoke of love, loss, and redemption. I struck up a conversation with the booth's owner, a gentle soul named Marisol, who had a talent for finding beauty in life's contradictions. She listened as I recounted the long, painful journey of my own heartbreak, nodding with empathy as I spoke of my wife's sudden departure and the echoing call from Aaron. Marisol's kind eyes and thoughtful words helped me see that the scars I bore were not symbols of weakness, but of resilience. Every ending, she said softly, is simply a prelude to a new beginning. The pain you feel now is but one chapter in your story, a story that still holds so much promise. Her words lingered with me long after I left the fair. In the days and weeks that followed, I made it a point to embrace every opportunity for growth. I continued to write, to volunteer, and to explore the world around me with an open heart. I reconnected with old friends, rekindling relationships that had long been overshadowed by the demands of everyday life. Each conversation, each shared laugh, was a reminder that the world was still filled with beauty and connection, even after the harshest of storms. One evening, as I sat on the porch of my modest home watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The anger, the sorrow, and the despair had not disappeared entirely, they were etched into my memory like scars on a well-worn piece of skin. But I had learned to see them not as marks of defeat, but as evidence of survival. I had learned that true healing was not about erasing the past, but about finding a way to carry its lessons forward into a life reimagined. I eventually decided to reach out to Marisol and some of the friends I had made in my writing class. We began meeting regularly to share our work, to discuss the myriad ways in which we had navigated our own personal crises. In our small group, I found a sense of belonging that I had never anticipated, a community of souls who had all been broken by life's twists and turns, yet were determined to mend and flourish. With each meeting, I felt the heavy weight of isolation lift a little more, replaced by the warm glow of shared experience and hope. In these moments of creative communion, I came to understand that the narrative of my life was still being written. The painful chapter marked by my wife's sudden departure and the call from her new boyfriend was an indelible part of my story, but it was not the whole story. I had the power to author the next chapters, to weave together threads of sorrow, resilience, and newfound purpose into a tapestry that honored both the past and the future. I vowed to myself that I would continue writing, through prose, poetry, and every form of expression that allowed me to explore the full spectrum of human emotion. As spring melted into summer, I took a leap of faith and began working on a long-overdue novel, a story inspired by my own experiences of love lost and found, of betrayal and redemption. The process was cathartic. With every page I filled, I felt as though I was reclaiming a part of myself that had been hidden away in the shadows of heartbreak. In the quiet solitude of my study, the clack of the keyboard became a steady rhythm of hope, a reminder that even after the harshest winter, new life could bloom. One sunny afternoon, I received an invitation to speak at a local community event about overcoming personal loss. Standing in front of a modest crowd in a small, refurbished hall, I shared my story, honestly and vulnerably, without shying away from the pain or the mistakes of the past. As I spoke, I saw nods of understanding, tears of empathy, and even smiles of encouragement among the audience. In that moment, I realized that my journey, with all its twists and heartbreaks, had become a source of strength not just for me but for others as well. The very act of sharing had transformed my narrative from one of isolation to one of collective healing. Now, as I write these words, I understand that life is an ever-evolving tapestry of experiences. My wife's silent departure and the call from her new boyfriend will forever remain as chapters in my past, a painful reminder of love's impermanence and the fragility of trust. Yet, they have also given me the impetus to rebuild, to seek out beauty in unexpected places, and to believe in my own resilience. I have learned that the process of healing is not linear, and that every setback is an opportunity to emerge stronger, more compassionate, and more in tune with the true essence of who I am. In the final analysis, I have come to embrace the messy, imperfect, and ultimately beautiful journey of my life. I no longer define myself solely by the pain of abandonment or the sting of betrayal. Instead, I stand here, a man who has navigated the labyrinth of loss and emerged with scars that testify to his survival and a heart open to the possibility of new beginnings. I have learned that even when the ones we love leave without a word, even when their absence is punctuated by a call from a stranger who has replaced them in our lives, we still have the power to choose how our story unfolds. So, as the sun sets on this chapter and rises on another, I look forward with cautious optimism. I continue to write, to volunteer, to explore, and to connect with those who, like me, have found that life's most profound lessons often come wrapped in the guise of heartbreak. Every sunrise is a chance to start over, every conversation an opportunity to heal, and every memory, a bittersweet blend of joy and sorrow, a reminder that love in all its forms remains the most powerful force in our lives. I now realize that the journey from pain to hope is a winding one, filled with unexpected detours and moments of quiet revelation. My heart, though forever changed, beats with a newfound determination, a determination to honor the past without being shackled by it, to celebrate the beauty of the present, and to embrace the promise of a future where even the darkest nights give way to the gentle light of dawn. In the echo of every step I take, I carry the memory of what was lost, but I also nurture the hope of what can be found. And so, I close this chapter with gratitude for the lessons learned, for the friendships forged in adversity, and for the strength that emerges when one dares to look beyond the pain. My story is far from over, it is a work in progress, a mosaic of broken pieces meticulously gathered and transformed into a portrait of resilience, redemption, and the unwavering belief that even after the deepest wounds, love can find a way to heal. This is the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a testament to the fact that though the past may be filled with echoes of abandonment and betrayal, the future is open, waiting to be written with hope, courage, and an indomitable spirit.